CBS, America's #1 independent television network, presents the following sports exclusive.
Gets the throw away, intercepted, and another pick six for the Ohio State defense. Malik Hooker just walks in. Weber dives for an Ohio State touchdown. Barrett running all the way and scoring standing up. That was easy. Samuel cuts it back. Ohio State wins.
Welcome to Basically a Football Show.
Basically a Football Show. Week 13, rivalry week in college football, and week 12 in the National Football League. But rivalry week, as we said last week, probably the best weekend of football, of the year, with the Thanksgiving week and all the things on the line. I'm Zach. Along with me is Greg, and Greg, rivalry lived up to what it needed to be. We had some great top matchups with Ohio State and Michigan, some great smaller matchups all down the line. Just the perfect college football weekend.
Absolutely. Good NFL weekend, too. As I said last week, out for my money, best weekend in sports, period. But that's because I'm a huge college football fan, and I also kind of like the NFL. So, yeah, if you could throw like the World Series on this weekend, I'd be in heaven. Just, you know what? Let's just make it truly great. Let's do the Stanley Cup playoffs, rivalry weekend, and the World Series all at the same time, and it couldn't get any better as far as I'm concerned.
Might be a little overload.
Might be a little bit, yeah. But no, it was the Ohio State-Michigan game. We talked about it on Bass. I think might be the best one I remember. And I've been watching them for a very long time, and that was just so exciting and so much fun. So a lot of things that but nothing really shook out either, kind of, except for Michigan. So
right. Yeah. Well, did Michigan really shake out? Because here's how the rankings stack up, of course. Number one with a bullet, the Alabama Crimson Tide, 12-0. 30-12 win in the Iron Bowl over Auburn. Could have been it was a tight game at first, but Alabama turned on its Alabama switch, and they just keep cruising along. Going to the SEC title game with no issues. Number two, as you said, still staying at number two, the non-division winning, the non-conference game participating Ohio State Buckeyes beat number 3 Michigan in overtime. The first overtime game in that game series history. Michigan loses 30-27 and just drops 2 spots to number 5. Clemson wins against South Carolina. They're 11-1. They're number 3. Washington beats Washington State in the Apple Cup easily, 45-17, and they stay at number 4. And then Wisconsin and Penn State, your Big Ten teams, 6 and 7. Colorado playing Washington is at number 8. So I think we're in a really weird situation.
Well,
because
let me point out one thing really quick before I forget.
Yes.
Of your top 5 in the college football playoff rankings, you have a second-place team and a third-place team.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, in their conferences. I mean, you can call Ohio State non-winning, this and that. They're the second-place team in their division in the Big Ten. Michigan's the third-place team in their division in the Big Ten. Yeah. And they're number 2 and number 5. So go ahead.
And the number 1 team in that division is number 7 in the country.
Right.
So according to what the committee spokesman said on Tuesday night, the gap between Ohio State and Wisconsin and Penn State is significant.
I'd agree.
So, and I think we would agree on that too. Obviously Penn State beat Ohio State, but if you look at the circumstances in which they beat them, on the road, at night, they had to get a block punt and, all that sort of stuff late. It was just a confluence of circumstances that, yes, sometimes you lose a football game that way.
It was one of those
good on Penn State.
1 out of 10 games that I talked about on Bass. One time out of 10, Penn State's going to win that matchup, and that was the one time. Right.
But does that mean Penn State is the better football team? No. And we see that plenty of times where the best team does not win the game. People argue, well, if they were the best team, they would have won the game. But in the way that the college football committee works, where you look at a team's body of work and you take everything into account, on the whole, Ohio State is the better football team than Penn State this year. Just plain and simple.
Right.
So there's a significant gap between there and there. Then what they also said is, despite Michigan falling all the way to 5, the committee spokesman said the gap between Michigan at number 5 and Washington at number 4, they said that difference is negligible.
I'd agree with that as well.
So what the thing, what's kind of interesting here, I think no matter what happens in the Big Ten championship game, no matter who wins, whether it's Penn State who beat Ohio State or whether it's Wisconsin who lost to both Michigan and Ohio State, the Big Ten winner may not get in. Ohio State, I think, without a doubt, unless the committee does something really weird, Ohio State is in the playoff no matter what happens this weekend.
Yeah, I'd agree with that too. I think the only way you see the Big Ten winner getting in is if everybody in front of them loses.
Well, and here's the other thing with that. I think even if, say, Washington loses to Colorado, which I think is probably the most likely of the scenarios,
right?
With Clemson playing Virginia Tech in the ACC title game. If Washington loses to Colorado, I would not be in the least bit surprised if the Big Ten champion didn't jump Michigan and Michigan moved up to number 4.
Oh yeah, I'd agree with that too. That's the thing. It's going to be right now. What the committee's hoping for, the best possible scenario for them right now is that Alabama, Clemson, and Washington all win. Mm-hmm. Because if not, then they've really got some problems. Because then you are going to keep out a legitimate conference champion at the expense of a third place team, because that's what's going to happen. Because I think the gap between Ohio State and Michigan down to Penn State, Wisconsin is pretty big. And if everybody, if Clemson loses and Washington loses, you got to put Michigan in there. I mean, I don't know. It's going to be very, very interesting. So the committee right now is praying to God that Clemson and Washington both win, because if they don't, we've got a real mess on our hands. Right.
And then here's the other thing that happens too. Say Colorado beats Washington. That's number 8 beating number 4. How far do you move up Colorado? Does Colorado jump over Wisconsin or Penn State potentially? Could be.
Yeah.
There's still a lot of things that are in flux in terms of that, but I think the road to the playoff is pretty clear, and neither of us think that Alabama is going to lose at any point during the rest of the season.
No. I think that they can start setting up a space for the new beer tap right now if they want to.
Right. Ohio State is in no matter what, because let's say Penn State wins because Penn State beat Ohio State, right?
Yeah.
You're not going to drop Ohio State from 2 to 5. You're not going to kick them all the way out of the playoff.
Not especially when they haven't done anything except beat the number 3 team in the country and sit back and wait. You can't
especially with the rest of the teams.
Yeah.
A lot of people keep pointing to year 1 of the playoff when we had Baylor and TCU. And TCU was number 3 in the country, but even though they had lost to Baylor, TCU was number 3, and they got crowned co-champions. And so the committee everyone else thought it was, well, the committee has to pick. Is it TCU or is it Baylor? Is it Baylor or is it TCU? And that year, the committee said, screw it, we're not going to pick either of them. We'll throw them both out and just throw in Ohio State.
But Ohio State that year, too, was legitimate Big Ten champions.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's what makes this different.
Yeah.
And it's not like they have the option to just say, oh, well, I don't know, let's just throw this team out. Ohio State is the number 2 team in the country, and they have been for a long time. And the committee has clearly thought that they're the number 2 team because they've kept them up there. Even when they lost to Penn State, they only fell down to 5?
Yeah, I was going to say, other than the week that they lost to Penn State, I think they've been at number 2 all season. Mm-hmm. So you've really got to do some gymnastics to figure out a way to drop them out of the top 5 or top 4 at this point.
Right. If they drop Ohio State out of the top 4, they're basically going against what they put up as the rankings all season.
Yeah.
And, at that point, then you have the argument, well, why do we even do these if we're just going to screw with them the last week of the season? Because some people are saying, well, the resumes aren't complete. This is the rankings as they are right this second without the championships thrown in. Once the championships get thrown in, they could go haywire. I don't believe that because I think the committee wants to stay consistent.
I agree.
And the other thing to bring up from that first year, it's a hell of a lot easier to kick TCU from 3 to 5 or 6 or whatever they ended up being than it is to kick Ohio State from 2 to 5 or 6.
I think we even talked about it back when it happened. Look, I wasn't crazy about Ohio State jumping in. I thought I was okay. I understood it, but if they had left TCU in the top 4, I would not have had a problem with that.
I think we said if it was Oklahoma or Texas, there was no way that would happen, right?
Yeah, and the thing of it is that we looked. It's the Big 12, and even you can say what you want about the Big Ten, and that's fine. But the old they're terrible. That's kind of gone now. They're actually a pretty good conference. And 2 years ago, they were a better conference than the Big 12. And there was you could make the argument very easily that Ohio State deserved that spot. Where if you drop Ohio State out, I don't know what your argument would be at this point. I don't know what you would, other than just to say, and I totally respect this. If they did it, we have to have conference champions. I'd be okay. I'm fine with that. But short of that, there's no excuse to do it.
Right. But I think plain and simple to kind of break it down in a simple fact, the Big Ten champion, if things stay as they are, and Alabama wins and Clemson wins and Washington wins, the Big Ten champion is not going to be in the playoff.
No.
Ohio State will be, but the Big Ten champion will not be in the playoff.
No, but I think any reasonable college football fan, anybody outside of Madison or outside of Happy Valley, will look at this and go, okay, Ohio State's second place in their division in the Big Ten, but they are so clearly the better of those three teams. And right. I'm not saying that as a homer. That's just a fact. I think anybody would agree with that. So it's going to be weird. And I've said it all along. I don't want to back in like this, but I also think it would be absolutely ridiculous to knock them out of the number 2 spot after they've been there pretty much all year.
Yeah, I mean, I get. Trust me, as I love the traditions of college football. I love the structure of it for the most part, and I too have a hard time kind of wrapping my head around that a team not playing in this conference championship game will get into the playoff over the team that actually wins that conference. It's a weird set of circumstances. Things normally don't work out like this.
Right.
Yes, every year there's always a little bit of chaos that happens in college football, and that's kind of why we love it. But normally things still work their way out. Like there'll be some chaos and it'll take a conference out of it, let's say. But in this situation, the Big 12 hasn't been good enough to jump up to take that spot.
Yeah.
Notre Dame isn't good enough this year to be that independent threatening to get up there. And even, we don't have a team like the Boise States of old that say, hey, we're like, yes, we have Western Michigan, but that's not one of those Boise State or Utah teams when they were outside the picture that could say, hey, we're a legitimately really good team and we deserve to be there too. You just don't have that. Like, you have Alabama 12-0, easy to go. Then you have those 3 11-1 teams, obviously right where they should be. And Michigan, I think, is the outlier, but then you get all these 10-2s. And Oklahoma or Oklahoma State will be 10-2 when they win, when they play each other this weekend for the Big 12 title. And like we've said all year, once you get past that top 5 group, and Louisville was in there for a while, but you can't put them there anymore.
No, they're well out of it now.
Once you get past those top 5 teams, those are your contenders.
Oh, it drops off significantly from Michigan down. I mean, even the committee said so.
Yeah, I mean, Wisconsin, yes, they played Michigan tight. It was 14-7, but Wisconsin was never going to beat Michigan, I don't think. Penn State, yes, they beat Ohio State, but it was on one of Ohio State didn't play well, and Penn State had its best day and some luck at home.
Mm-hmm.
Colorado, great story, but look, I don't even think Washington is really up to snuff with the rest of these teams, but they're 11-1 and they're leading their conference. They deserve to be there with the wins they've had.
I think Washington, if nothing else, has deserved the shot to show if they are part of this group or not. That I'll give them, Yeah.
And then, we obviously have our thoughts about the Big 12, and then USC's had a really good season, but they're not up there, and Florida State got knocked down in Louisville, and then, then we're down to what is the rest of college football. It's been so clear all season that really it's Alabama, Ohio State, and Michigan have been the best 3 teams. Clemson's been good, but not as good as maybe we thought, or even as they were last year. But they're there, and same thing with Washington. But like we said, if Clemson or Washington were to fall for some reason, there's no reason that I could definitely see Michigan popping in there.
Yeah.
Right? Because they've been that good.
See, but here's the thing. I'm just wondering, though, okay, if you're the committee, all right, you've already got Ohio State in there who hasn't won anything. Mm-hmm. Do you really let's just say for the sake of argument that Washington loses. You're going to have Michigan at 10-2, and you're going to have Wisconsin or Penn State at 11-2. Can you really justify leaving one of those two out? And this again, see where this helps Ohio State. They're going to sit back and do nothing. and their record's going to stay the same. This kind of hurts Michigan because all of a sudden they've got one less win than the conference champion. So I think if Clemson or Washington loses, I think you will see the Big Ten champion jump in there because it would be very, very hard. It's hard enough to justify having a second place team in there above the conference champ. To have a third place team in there above a conference champ, I don't see how they can rationalize that.
Could you see Colorado jumping over if Colorado was the one to beat Washington, and Washington falls out? Could Colorado jump over the Big Ten champion as the Pac-12 champ?
That I could see possibly, yeah. They
played Michigan tough. They lost to USC. They beat Stanford 10-5. They beat Washington State. They beat Utah. And they beat Washington. They're coming on strong, but I don't know if they have the same resume as some of those other teams. I mean, it'd be fun, but
I just think what we're going to see is I think Michigan, and sorry about this, Wolverine fans, you deserve better. And someday when we get our 8-team tournament, this won't happen to you. But right now, you're pretty well screwed. Yeah. I don't think they're going to get in no matter what happens, barring. I don't know how they could do it really because it's just you can't justify taking an 11-2 team out and putting a 10-2 team that finished third in this division in.
Yeah,
especially when you've already got Ohio State in there messing things up.
I think because of where we are, like even let's say we go full chaos here and say for some reason Alabama loses to Florida.
Oh my God!
I don't care. Alabama's not dropping out of the top 4.
No, they will stay in the top 4.
Like Alabama, I think is set too.
Yep.
They could lose even if they lost to Florida by like 50. Like something weird really happens. I don't think that they couldn't drop out of the top 4.
I will say this: if Alabama loses to Florida by 50 in the same year that Cleveland won a championship, the Cubs won the World Series, and Donald Trump got elected president, the end is near. It's like we're not going to make it to the end of the year. It's that simple.
So, yeah, I mean, we don't think that's going to happen. But even an Alabama loss keeps them in the top 4. I think they're set.
I agree, yep.
Like we said, I don't think you drop Ohio State no matter what. Even, as much as I have kind of my doubts with Clemson, I don't know if you knock out Clemson for any of those teams either.
Yeah, see, that's
in terms of who's the best teams in college football this year.
Right. I think the one with the most precarious hold on their spot is Washington. They have to win.
Yeah.
They don't win, they're out.
As the committee said, the gap between 4 and 5 with Washington and Michigan is tight. And so, like, basically what they were saying is that they could have very well had Michigan at 4 still, if they really wanted to. But they gave Washington the edge because they're a conference leader and playing in the conference championship game, and I'm fine with that. But yeah, things will get sorted out. There's only a couple things. Really, what this comes down to is there's really only a couple things left to find out. Does Washington slip up against Colorado, and does the Big Ten champ get that much more juice to jump in?
Yeah.
I think the other thing that's kind of curious, or to me, it's another instance of the committee trying to give itself, a little help on the back end of things. Because you see who snuck in at number 25 in the rankings this week. That would be Pitt. And Pitt has beaten Penn State, and they've beaten Clemson. So should things stay as they are again, Pitt's not playing another game, but say Penn State wins. And then you could say, well, but they lost to Pitt. Well, they'd be like, well, Pitt's a ranked team, and they also beat Clemson. Uh-huh. And then maybe you give them a little extra juice to give them that next leap over. We saw that for a long time with the Big 12. They would kind of keep some of these teams in there to say, hey, look, they beat ranked teams, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if that's completely on purpose, but I took notice of it just to, as maybe to say, hey, give a little juice to Penn State. So if we need to, we can jump them over with some reasoning that we made up ourselves.
Right. Well, yeah, they've engineered the rankings a little bit to give themselves some cover, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's going to be, we will definitely know more after next weekend. But right now, here's the way I see it. If Alabama, Clemson, and Washington wins, that's it. Party's over.
Yep.
We've got our playoff.
100%.
If Now, okay, one of the two loses. I think the Big Ten champion will jump in. But then I thought about this. What if the Big Ten champion is Wisconsin, who lost to both Ohio State and Michigan?
Exactly.
Then what do you do? I mean, then you could legitimately use the argument, yes, but they're conference champions. And that's how you keep Michigan out. But if you wanted to put Michigan in there and say, well, look, yeah, Wisconsin won the conference, but they lost to both Michigan and Ohio State, that argument makes some sense too. So I don't know, if it's going to be crazy. And like I said right at the beginning, what the committee hopes the most for right now is that everybody just wins and leaves it the way it is because it's already kind of messed up, and they don't want it to get any more messed up than it already is. Yeah.
Another discussion I had in regards to all this, and we're trying to figure out exactly what the committee wants and what their criteria is. We're still in year. People forget that this is only the third year of this, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so we have such a small sample size as to what actually matters at the end of the day to them. Like in year one, there was all this, there was the talk of the co-championships with TCU and Baylor, whereas Ohio State was a clear champion. So in year one, conference championships were the biggest deal. Year two, things were a little bit more straightforward. And now, because of how things have kind of shaken out, now it's, well, we're actually looking for the best teams. So they're still trying to sort out exactly what it is. It's that thing of first time is an accident, 2 times is a coincidence, 3 times is a pattern sort of idea.
Yep.
Where it's just the third year. We don't know exactly what it is. And the committee's had different members every single year. Not entirely new members, but they have some people kind of going in and out year to year. And so it's not even the same group of people that we've had over the last 2 years. So maybe
you're getting different
something a little bit more.
Yeah, you're getting differing philosophies every single year.
Yeah.
I think the only real solution to this, and again, the first year we had a little controversy. The second year was pretty clear cut. There really wasn't any argument to be made. Third year, we're back to controversy again. And I just think that what we talked about, we've said it a million times, an 8-team tournament, 5 top-ranked conference champions, and 3 at large solves your problem. And
yeah, I mean, that would fix this problem pretty easy.
Oh, yeah, no problem.
We talked about it on basically a sports show that I hope you're listening to as well. If we did it this year, it'd be Alabama, Clemson, Washington, the Penn State, Wisconsin winner, Oklahoma or Oklahoma State. Those are your 5 teams, your 5 power conference teams. Then you get your at-larges of Ohio State and Michigan, and just for giggles, you give them the big 5, the group of 5 champion, and throw Western Michigan in the mix.
Why not?
Because why not? There's 8.
Yeah.
Easy, done. And that's an agreeable playoff that nobody really have any problem with.
No, and everybody's
as far as hard as you're not going to say that Oklahoma State should be there. No one cares.
And everybody always says, well, if you do that, then it's just the 8 and 9 team. But as I've said all along, it's a lot harder to make that argument between 8 and 9 than it is, say, 3 and 4.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, fine, you were the number 9 team in the country, too bad. Play better next year. And it's just that's what needs to be done. I like the idea of a 4-team playoff until we saw that, okay, this can really get messed up. And but again, my fear too is, you go to 8, it's not a matter of time before you're at 16. And then the next thing you know, and I don't want to see that happen. I don't want it to become the NFL playoffs where you've got 13 teams out of however many, but it's it's fun. I mean, it's certainly fun to sit here and contemplate what's going to happen. And I will say this for the record again, as an Ohio State fan, as an Ohio State alumnus, I am not happy about this. I would have much rather won the conference and got in legitimately, but you can't really make a good argument for knocking Ohio State out at this point.
Yeah. No, like I said, I'm one that kind of values the conference championship idea in almost any of these things. Like, yes, it's fun when a wild card team wins in the playoffs of a pro sport.
Right.
But then it's like, well, what's the point of winning your division at that point? And for college football is so built upon the conferences and the tradition of that. And, when it comes to bowl ties and things like that, it's all about who wins the conference.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when you have this, and it's just, if we're really just going for the 4 best teams, it can be hard to kind of wrap your head around if you're a traditional college football fan. But again, this is just a weird circumstance. Normally, it does not work out this way. In a regular year, Ohio State is the Big Ten champion, in a regular year.
or they
you have the weird thing of,
or they lose to Wisconsin and they end the argument. Either way, but it's not. And I mean, you can blame Ohio State for this for a multitude of reasons, not the least of which they should have just beaten Penn State and we wouldn't be having this discussion.
Oh, of course.
You know, but,
and if Michigan hadn't lost to Iowa, then this wouldn't be an issue either.
Right. And I always just say what I always say. Why does it always have to be us? Why are we the ones that have to screw everybody all the time?
Yeah. Well,
anyway.
I see, a couple people kind of complain about what we're talking about here, where it's all this subjective discussion where some people are saying, well, this is worse than the BCS already. Because we didn't know what was going on with the BCS. Like, no.
Remember,
I'd rather have people that are actually looking at the games deciding who's good, because we can all see it too, rather than a computer telling me that South Florida is the number 2 team in the country.
Not only that, but let's not forget
that happened.
Yeah, no kidding. And let's not forget too that the BCS gave us the great Alabama LSU Part 2. Mm-hmm. Remember? So, yeah, this is not look, the BCS. And here's the thing about the BCS, too. I'm going to say 85% of the time it got it right. It wasn't as bad as people remember it, but this is still way better. Way better.
Yeah, the BCS would get things right, but then sometimes you just have weird circumstances where you get LSU versus Alabama, where you get that one, and then you have another year where it was, I think it was USC and Oklahoma. There were 3 undefeated teams.
Yeah.
It was USC, Oklahoma, and Auburn, the undefeated SEC champion, didn't get to play in the national title game.
Yeah.
Unheard of in today.
Yeah.
But, if the playoff had been in place back then, you let everyone play each other in the field, and that's that. So I think one way or the other, the problem that the BCS had, this is correcting, is the structure. The BCS picked teams based on computer values and a tabulation of votes, and just said, here's 2 teams, go play. Now, yes, there is some subjectivity. You may not agree fully on who gets into the playoff, but the teams still have to earn their way through. We saw it in the first year, and I know we talked about small sample size, but first year, Ohio State was on the outside. They get thrown in. Big 12 cries, well, how did they get in? They jumped up, blah, blah, blah. Ohio State won the national championship.
Convincingly, too. Not barely, not by a bunch of upsets. I mean, they went out and they got the job done. And after that, it kind of settled the argument. And I think that'll happen this year, too. I understand Michigan's point. I understand Wisconsin, Penn State. I even get Colorado's argument. But you take your biases out of it. I just can't buy the fact that any of those teams are better than the teams in front of them. I don't care what the records are, what the conference standings are. It's just the way it works. Look, the Cleveland Browns beat the Patriots badly about 3 years ago. I mean, just ran them out of the building. Does that mean the Browns are better than the Patriots? No. It just happened. It was a 1 in 10 game. In that case, probably more like 1 in 1,000, but still.
The way college football is and the way football is, we can't have everybody settle it on the field.
No.
You have to draw a line at some point and then let those teams figure it out. You can't do a college basketball tournament. We're not going to have the top 16 teams all play each other. Do you really want to see West Virginia face Alabama right now? Like, come on. 4 works for now. I think because of the way things are, and there's so much more money to be had, I think, out of this thing.
Yeah.
I think ultimately we will go to at least 6, probably 8, and that'll be the end of that. And then if anybody has any complaints after 8 teams,
there's no argument to be made at 8, 9. You're lucky to even be there in the first place, so let's not start complaining about it.
Week 12 in the National Football League. We'll start on Thursday, Thanksgiving, fun day for football as always, and a couple big results out of Thursday. Some real great games on Thanksgiving, some meaningful games, which is always nice. Start off in the morning where the Lions knocked off the Vikings 16-13. Big win for the Lions. They take over first place, sole possession of first place in the NFC North with the 16-13 win over the Vikes. The Vikings have lost 5 in a row.
Yeah, they start out the season 5-0.
Yeah,
and they're 6-5 now. So they've been 1 in 5.
1 and 5.
1 and 5 ever since. Lions, though, I mean, they not only do they have the lead in the division, they've got the tiebreakers locked up at this point, right?
Yeah,
I think they've beaten Minnesota twice.
Coming out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Yep. Have they beat Minnesota twice?
I'm pretty sure.
Let me pull it up.
Yeah.
Yeah, twice in 3 weeks.
Yep.
How about that?
Yep.
So they got, the Vikings are really their only competition for that right now. And they did lose the Packers early in the year. So if the Packers could, I don't know, get it together, but I don't think that that's happening.
No, they've still got to get past the Vikings just to catch the Lions.
Right. Yeah, I don't know what to do with the Lions. Like we said, I don't know what their identity really is. Matt Stafford had another great game. They ran the ball decently well. Defense came up with some big plays at the end to seal it, like they've done in all these.
Haven't they come behind in every single win they've had this year?
I don't know about every single one, but it feels like it. Every one of the ones that I've seen, they've had a turnover in the final 3 minutes that they then capitalize on and win the game. I
mean, I don't want to call them lucky, but I think that you get those years where, and you've seen they do metrics on this, where a team will, with close games and all that, sometimes it's all the breaks go your way. I think the Lions are having one of those years. I'm not saying they're not okay, but they're also getting a few breaks going their way too. Yeah, no, definitely. It's a few things just going their way, but I love it. I think it's great, and they can't complain. I mean, if it can't be the Packers, make it. Then the Lions are fine by me. Yeah, and again, this is a group of Lions players, especially a guy like Matt Stafford, that they looked like they were going to be that new guard for the Lions, and that they were going to turn the ship around. They were going to be the Lions version of the Drew Brees Saints, or the Kurt Warner Cardinals, and take a team that's been really bad recently, and turn them around. And it's good to see them back on top right now. And I don't think they're going to do too much if they get to the playoffs, but the fact that they're right there, and they're 7-4, so I think that makes them. I did the wrong thing. They're right next to the Seahawks. Yeah, the Seahawks are 7-3-1. The Lions are 7-4. Falcons are also 7-4. So there's a big battle for that for the second bye in the NFC. Right. That the Lions could very well take themselves and maybe get a second round playoff game. Wouldn't that be great? Something? A home playoff game for Detroit. That'd be nice. Yeah. But speaking of the NFC's best, you go to the second game of Thanksgiving Day, and the Cowboys continue to do what they've done all season. 31-26 win over the Redskins. Redskins had a furious comeback there in the fourth quarter. The Redskins aren't a bad football team. No. I will say that. They've acquitted themselves well, even in these last couple losses. 6-4-1. They're still in the playoff picture. But the Cowboys are just clearly the class of the conference, maybe of the entire league at this point. Yeah, they're just good. You can try to qualify it or throw these disclaimers on it. That's just a good football team. They're 10-1, and you don't do that by accident in the NFL. Although I did hear that this part of their schedule is the toughest part of their schedule coming up. So we'll see. But I think they're legit. I don't think there's anything nothing to be exposed about these guys. They're just that good. Yeah, and I mean, you remember their first game, they were driving and they just couldn't get they had that one receiver that was like a rookie and just couldn't get the ball out of bounds to stop the clock. Yep. But they lost that game by a point to the Giants at home. They're 1 point away from being 12-0. Yeah, and 11-0. Yeah, and it's good. You know what? I'm glad they're not undefeated, because that would be too much to put on a rookie quarterback and everything. So it worked to their benefit, actually. And as much as we're rooting for the Cowboys, I think at this point, because we think that they're more fun than they usually are. If the Cowboys were undefeated, they might be insufferable at this point. Yeah, the one loss keeps them a little bit humble. Right. But they have another tough one this week. Thursday night, they're at Minnesota. I don't think that's a tough game anymore. I think Minnesota. I don't know, man. The defense is still going to be a challenge. That's true. Obviously Sam Bradford's fallen off. And you saw that in that Lions game, that the Vikings offense is just gone. And it's not just his fault. The Vikings offensive line has just been shredded in terms of injuries and things like that. And their running game's been decimated too. So there's a lot of things going against the Vikings in that sense, but I still think the defense is quality. And on a Thursday night, I've seen weirder things happen. True. And I'll say this, too, for the Vikings. I mean, it's kind of easy to forget this after a 5-0 start to see where they are now. But if you go back to when Teddy Bridgewater got hurt before the season started, I think most Viking fans would have gladly taken 6-5 at this point if they knew they could get it. And sure. It's a weird way to get there, but right now they're probably better than we thought they were going to be. It's just that they started out so hot, they don't seem so good all of a sudden. But I don't think 6-5 is too bad, all things considered. Yeah, they're still a half game out of a playoff spot right now. Yeah. So
all things considered, not the end of the world quite yet, but they're getting there. And actually, the thing interesting here too, I say that it's a weird Thursday game. Both these teams coming off Thursday games, so they get the full week of rest and practice. And well, I guess they don't get the full week of practice because they can't practice on the weekends. I don't think.
But whatever the case, you're going to get the rare instance where both Thursday night teams are going to be fully rested and ready to go.
Right.
Yeah.
And then the Cowboys, in terms of their tough stretch, they're at the Vikings this week. They're at the Giants next week, and that's a little opportunity for redemption for them to make up for that week 1 loss.
Yep.
I think they're fine. The rest of their schedule is at Vikings, at Giants, home against the Buccaneers, home against the Lions, then at the Eagles. So the Cowboys actually have a lot of say in the playoff picture here too, because the Buccaneers are now strangely only a half game out of a playoff spot, and the Lions are right there with everybody else too. So still some tests, but I think that they're plenty good enough to take it down any of those teams going forward. The night game was Steelers-Colts. Colts playing without Andrew Luck, out with a concussion. Scott Tolzien of Wisconsin fame once made a start for your Packers at one point. He did not lead the Colts to victory. The Steelers win 28-7. Pretty easy there. The Steelers move up to 6-5, but they're still trailing in the division behind Baltimore. They're tied with Baltimore, but Baltimore has the head-to-head tiebreaker. It's just so bad for the Steelers that they had those games without Big Ben because they're still climbing up the hill. I still think they're probably the third best team in the AFC.
I do too. They're
up there, but they just can't get over that Ravens hump quite yet.
They had some dumb losses. I don't know if they're dumb, but I think like going out in week 3 and losing to the Eagles really badly hurt. But they're kind of just a victim of circumstances. Roethlisberger was out. They're a better team than 6-5, but they're kind of in a spot now where I don't know if they're in danger of missing the playoffs, but they really can't screw around the rest of the way. They got to keep it together here because a dumb loss could end it for them. I mean, it's just, it's unfortunate because I'm with you. I think they're at least the third best team in the AFC.
Yeah, they're a game out of the wild card spot, but with Kansas City where it is and Denver where it is and Miami where it is all of a sudden, Pittsburgh has to keep their eyes on the Ravens, I think. And, their best bet is just chase down that division title. But yeah, they've got a tough needle to thread here coming down their stretch. On to Sunday, we'll start in Chicago, where reportedly the Titans and Bears played a football game.
They did. I watched part of it.
Matt Barkley gets his first career touchdown pass for the Bears. He's a guy that's been in the league for a long time, but
I was going to say
finally gets there.
Hearing him get that first touchdown pass and immediately raise the question: Matt Barkley still around?
Yeah,
that's what I thought. Look at my, I finally give up on my irrational confidence Titans and look at them this year.
6-6.
Yep.
Yeah, I guess technically they're in the playoff race.
Sure.
They're a game and a half out of the playoffs right now. It's just a weird thing that they're up there. They'll get what's coming to them soon enough. But yeah, 6-6. I haven't seen a lot of the Titans, so I don't know really what's looking for them. But
they're like a team where it's like sometimes you go, hey, they're pretty good. And then 10 minutes later, going, okay, they're not very good. They're kind of one of those, I don't know if they're sneaky good or if they're like a bad good team or a good bad team. They're kind of like right in the middle where you don't know really what they are.
Yeah. But Barkley, 3 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Not bad.
Not bad.
Not bad for the old USC quarterback.
And I actually saw a sign in the stands that said, keep Cutler in Chicago. So not everyone there hates him.
There's at least one person.
That might have been his brother. I don't know. But there was one guy in the stands with a sign.
Yeah. The Bills and Jaguars also reportedly play a football game in Buffalo. Conflicting reports.
I can't verify this one. I didn't watch any of it.
Yeah. Supposedly the Bills beat the Jaguars 28-21, but who knows? Bills are 6-5. They're doing just okay.
Yeah, they're right there with the Steelers.
There's a lot of these middle of the road teams that are just kind of hanging around, and I don't, the Bills aren't good, the Titans aren't really good, but they're around. somehow. As we mentioned, the Ravens, they moved to 6-5 with the win over the Bengals, 19-14. Oh God, the Bengals.
Yeah, they're done. That's it. It's over.
No, they've been dead for a while, but it's every time I see that they're 7-3 or 3-7-1, just amazes me that the team has fallen where they are.
I thought they were maybe right there with the Steelers as the most talented team in that division, and they just have not been good at all this year.
But the Ravens still keep a hold on first place with that win. Let me pull up the Ravens schedule here. I don't know how they're doing this necessarily, but let me see what they've got going on.
They're fundamentally.
They play the Dolphins. They play the Dolphins this week. They're at the Patriots, home against the Eagles, at the Steelers, at the Bengals.
They could end up being, what are they, 6-5 right now?
6-5.
They could easily be 6-10 after that.
Yeah, Dolphins could be a loss with the way the Dolphins are playing. Patriots should be a loss. Eagles, toss up. Steelers in Pittsburgh should be a loss. At the very least, there's 3 losses out of those next 4 games.
Well, but I will say this for the Ravens: they played the Steelers tough in Pittsburgh. They're one of the few teams that doesn't seem to mind playing there out of that division. But yeah, they could easily be 6-10 when this is all said and done. I knew they'd be better, but I didn't think they'd be first place better this year.
And for comparison, the Steelers have the Giants, Bills, Bengals, Ravens, and Browns to finish off the season. I think the Steelers are in better position.
Yeah, I agree.
to get that done. But we'll see how that goes. Cardinals and Falcons met in a battle of red and black bird teams with terrible uniforms. Just so many weird similarities between those two teams now that I think about it. But the Falcons pulled that one out 38-19. Carson Palmer and the Cardinals just continue to slide, and the Falcons 7-4. They're right in the mix for that bye in the NFC.
Falcons did not fall apart this year like I thought they would, because they always reach that point where you go, okay, now it's time for the clock to strike midnight, but they're still playing pretty good football. Still playing pretty good, but I guess they already played the Buccaneers both times, and they were 1-1 against the Buccaneers. So the Falcons are 7-4. The Buccaneers, I'll just pull up their game now. They beat the Seahawks 14-5. Yeah.
To move up to 6-5. It's a pretty big win for the Bucs to pull that off.
I think
Not the most offensively explosive, but a great defensive game to hold the Seahawks in that one. So the Buccaneers are 6-5. They're a game behind Atlanta at 7-4. They're also a half game out of a playoff spot right this second. What do you think of the Buccaneers, especially in that win over Seattle? I like that they beat Seattle. That's a good win for them. And they only had a home win, which they haven't been that great at home this year either. Yeah, and they held them to 5 points, which I think is really impressive. I haven't watched a lot of the Bucs this year. All I know is that Tony Dungy loves them, thinks they're really good. I think the defense is pretty solid, and they're one of those teams that I don't know that they're not good. I don't think, but I don't know that I'd want to play them in the playoffs just because you just never know what you're going to get with them. And they could rise up. I mean, we saw it. They beat a really good Seattle team relatively easily, really. I mean, 14-5 is not a great score, but they held them to 5 points. That's pretty damn good. Between the Falcons and the Buccaneers, though, I think I might give the edge of the Falcons. I do too. On the schedule here. Neither of them have some easy wins because the NFC South is playing the AFC West this year. So, or both the Western divisions, I should say. So the Falcons get a hard one with the Chiefs, but then they get some easy ones with the Rams and the Niners, and they finish up with the Panthers and the Saints. Then the Buccaneers, they get the Chargers. They have to go all the way out to San Diego this week. And San Diego, plucky. Yep. And they still get the Saints twice, the Cowboys in Dallas, and the Panthers to end up the season. So a tougher road of it for Tampa Bay for sure. Definitely. But back to things. The Giants, 8-3, they keep their hold on that the first wild card spot in the NFC, 27-13 over the Browns, who are 0-12. Josh McCown back for the Browns. So I've lost track at this point. That's good. I think Fire, 6 receptions, 131 yards. Yeah, he's been a bit of a revelation this year. I mean, he's actually a pretty good wide receiver. Yeah, he's not bad. They just need somebody to throw him the ball. Yep. Again, the Giants quietly sneaking along at 8-3, doing pretty well. Eli Manning and Odell Beckham, another great game. Yeah. Jason Pierre-Paul recovered a fumble for a touchdown. Yeah. Talk about teams that you might want to avoid in the playoffs. I think these New York Giants are probably one of them. They're quietly
kind of like they've done the last 2 times they won the Super Bowl. They're just kind of quietly moving along here, and nobody's really paying a whole lot of attention. And the next thing you know,
because I mentioned that battle for the in the standings in the NFC for that bye, right? Because Seattle's 7-3-1, Detroit's 7-4, Atlanta's 7-4. Whoever's the fourth team out of those has to play the Giants most likely. And if you're Atlanta, do you want to play the Giants?
No.
I don't think so.
No.
If you're Detroit, do you want to play the Giants?
No.
Probably not. Seattle could probably get away with it.
Yeah.
But if you're the Lions or Falcons, you are desperate to get up into that that number 2, or at least number 3.
Yeah.
3, you might play the Redskins, who you maybe could take, but
yeah, the Giants are quite good, man. They're 8-3. That's really the Cowboys are probably what's keeping the attention off the Giants because they're 10-1. But normally an 8-3 Giants team coming out of that division, everybody's going, "Hey, look at how good these guys are." But yeah, they're.
I think the Giants are fine with their lot in life right now. They won their 2 Super Bowls being a wild card before, so I think they'll
did.
Okay. Down in New Orleans, Jared Goff, his second career start, he looked great in the first half. threw 3 touchdowns, things were great, but the Rams defense just had a complete meltdown, a failure of everything on Sunday. The Saints were going against, for the first time, Greg Williams, their old defensive coordinator, who was one of the main culprits in the Bountygate scandal.
Right, yep.
So I'm sure there was a little bit extra to rub onto this game. If you're the Saints, they did it. 49-21 over the Rams. Again, the Rams looked really good in the first half. I liked what I saw out of Goff. It looked like he finally clicked in. And in the second half, they just couldn't click again, and the Rams defense was just non-existent on Sunday. Really bad showing from them.
Well, with Goff, I think with a rookie quarterback, you're going to get this where he's going to have a good half and a bad one. But if you're a Rams fan, again, I said it a couple weeks ago, we don't know what Goff's ceiling is yet. So even if he's still a better option than Case Keenum no matter what, because we know as good as Case Keenum's going to get, and it's going to be bad. So a good half out of Goff, I'll take that, and we'll see where we go.
Yeah, got the ball downfield a little bit. And again, the thing that would help him is if he can show that he can pass like he did in that first half, then that opens things up a little bit for Todd Gurley to maybe start getting going here late in the year. And the Rams are despite my preseason hype, I don't think the Rams are going to run off the next 5 games and make the playoffs. But
we weren't that far off the mark with them either. I mean, we weren't like guaranteeing anything. We just said they could do it, and they showed some signs, and I think they still do show some signs that they could be good, but they just aren't yet.
The Dolphins, they make a big play holding Colin Kaepernick and as the buzzer sounds, stopping him at the 2-yard line as time ran out to hold on to a 31-24 win. The Dolphins have won 6 in a row.
They are 7-4.
They are 7-4, and because of the tiebreakers right now, Miami Dolphins are the second wildcard team in the AFC currently.
This was a pretty good game, and oh my God, did it look good. Dolphins in those beautiful throwbacks, Niners in their road uniforms. But this is actually a pretty good football game, and I was kind of thinking towards the end there that the Dolphins were going to finally turn into the Dolphins again and lose this one, but they held down by the skin of their teeth and won it. But 7-4, I didn't expect this.
Tied with the Broncos, both teams at 7-4. The Dolphins currently have the tiebreaker based on conference winning percentage. And whether or not they'll stay there all year, they're going to be in the hunt right now. I think that's the best they can hope for, and the best that they could have asked at this point. And if you're that team that's just hanging around and say, because Kansas City and Denver still have to play again, say Kansas City beats Denver again, or say Denver loses to Oakland down the stretch. That opens the door for Miami to just slide in unnoticed and get that wild card spot. And they've got a pretty easy go of it down the rest of the way. They have the Ravens, the Cardinals, the Jets, the Bills, and the Patriots.
Wow. And, by the time they play the Patriots could be playing for nothing. So you can't automatically say that that's a loss either at this point.
And they get the Patriots at home.
Yeah.
So it's just things are kind of lining up for the Dolphins that if they don't screw it up somehow and lose one of these very winnable games, they might just get themselves back into the playoffs when no one could have expected that out of them.
And I think that they're actually a pretty good team. I think they're a little underrated, and they're dangerous. So
the defense is good. I like the pressure of that D line.
Yeah.
Tannehill's been effective. Yeah. And that running back, Ajayi, is really kind of the spark plug for him.
Yeah,
to get things
like you
going.
said, Tannehill's playing well, and they, new coaching staff the whole bit, so maybe they're finally putting it together down there. They've always had some decent talent. They just never seem to be able to get out of their own way.
Yeah. So they hold on. The Chargers beat the Texans 21-13. Again, poor Chargers, man. If they had just reversed their fortunes in some of those early games, they'd be in that talk with the Dolphins and the Broncos and everybody else.
2 games out of those horrible losses, and they'd be 7-4 right now.
Yeah, they're a good team, and the Texans. Look, well, here's the problem for Houston now. Houston's 6-5. I guess I didn't think about it when I was looking at the standings. Houston's 6-5. The Titans are 6-6.
Yeah,
Titans are a half game out of the division lead.
I'm officially right now putting
the Colts are a game out of the division lead.
I'm putting my irrational confidence back into my Tennessee Titans.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. So I probably just doomed them to failure, but still.
Let me see. So Houston loses to the Chargers, a bad loss, especially at home. It doesn't matter who they were playing. They're at the Packers, at the Colts, Jaguars, Bengals, at the Titans. Oh wow, at the Titans, week 16.
Oh 17? Yeah, there we go.
There you go. There's your division title game. The Titans though. Broncos, Chiefs, back-to-back weeks.
Oh man.
And then they get the Jaguars and they finish up with the Texans. So I think you might want to take back your confidence.
I'm going to stick with my confidence, and I'm going to say too that they will beat one of those 2 teams, the Broncos or the Chiefs.
Broncos
I'm going to
Kansas City.
I'm going to even call. The Chiefs are in Kansas City.
Yeah.
Where are the Broncos?
In Tennessee.
Okay, I'm going to take that. I think they beat the Broncos in that stretch.
Okay.
All right, we'll see.
But I actually think they actually have a bye week this week. The Titans do. So
we're still doing bye weeks.
Yeah.
Oh, for Pete's sake, enough already.
I think these are the last ones.
God.
I'm not entirely sure, but I think so. Already mentioned the Seahawks and the Bucks. The Raiders, they nearly let this one get away. They were up 17 points at half, but they hold on through a Panthers surge, and they hold things out in the fourth quarter, 35-32. Derek Carr, playing like a true football man in this game, breaking his pinky finger on his throwing hand on a snap. He was just, was like moving away, and the ball got snapped right into his pinky, and you could see it on the replay that his pinky was pointing the wrong direction. But he held in. Raiders 9-2, currently the number 2 seed in the AFC, leading the division now.
I don't know if you watched. This was a fun game to watch.
Yeah, I saw a bit of it. Just really good. The Raiders are a fun team. I'm really excited by this Raiders team. I like the defense. I like the offense.
Me too.
Just great. A game lead on Kansas City, 2 games over Denver. Kansas City holds the tiebreaker over Oakland right now, though. They still play once more at the end. They play the Chiefs in 2 weeks at Kansas City.
That'll be a big game.
Actually, the next 3 division games for the Raiders are all on the road with the Chiefs, Chargers, and Broncos. So that's rough because you get the Bills this week, at the Chiefs, at the Chargers, home against the Colts, then at the Broncos.
That is not an easy finish.
No.
I mean, the Chargers, that's not going to be an easy game either.
No. The Chiefs are at the Falcons, home against the Raiders, home against the Titans, home against the Broncos, and at the Chargers. So it looks like all the AFC West teams still have a game left with each other.
Yeah.
For the most part.
I'll tell you this, too. I'm just going to throw this in really quick. The Chargers are sitting at 5-6.
Mm-hmm.
It wouldn't surprise me a bit if they come out of this on the other side at 10-6. I think they're just, I don't know. Sure. We'll see.
They could definitely make a run. Because we said, I mean, they've been in some of these games. You just got to hope they're not demoralized from some of those losses. But let's see, they host the Buccaneers this week.
Yeah, that's winnable. At Panthers. That might be a little tough. Raiders is winnable at the Browns and at the Chiefs. I mean, you never know.
Yeah, things are lining up. If things break the right way, we could have a very, very interesting finish down the stretch
and
here.
It wouldn't be the first time the Chargers have backed into the playoffs like on the last day of the season either.
No, yeah, it's true. Patriots knock off the Jets 22-17. Patriots are dealing with some injuries. Tom Brady's knee was a little bit wonky. Gronkowski's been in and out of practice over the last couple of weeks. But they're still chugging along. They're 9-2. I don't think there's anything wrong there.
Yeah,
undefeated on the road, but
the Jets had the lead in this game, and I was like, and I forget how much time was left, and I thought I'm not even going to bother to watch because I know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
You know, this is one where it wasn't like I got mad and quit watching like I did with Chiefs Broncos. It was just like I know that Brady's going to come back and they're going to win this game. So I didn't want to see that, and I was right.
Yeah, let's talk about the Chiefs Broncos game. How'd this one end, Greg? Do you know?
No idea. No clue.
What a game this was. A great Sunday night game. Just another great AFC West game. It was scoreless into the second quarter where the Chiefs took a 9-0 lead in a matter of like 10 seconds.
Yeah.
Scored on a safety, and then they returned the ensuing kickoff for the touchdown. And I thought the Chiefs were going to start rolling away with it. I saw that happen while I was at dinner. Come home, do some other things, turn on the TV, and all of a sudden it's a tie game late. The Chiefs hang in this one. The Broncos look like the Broncos are up 1 late. They throw a bomb of a touchdown pass with about a minute and a half left.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh, 8 points. The Chiefs are still in it. But Greg,
that's where yours truly checked out. I was mad. I'm like, forget it. It's done. You got to remember too, the Chiefs had, I think, no timeouts left at this point.
No timeouts with a minute and a half left.
And they're down 8. It's like, this just isn't going to happen. So I turned it off. And
especially against that Broncos defense in Denver.
Right.
Sunday nights. What did you think? Obviously you didn't get to see it, but what do you think of the decision to kick the field goal, 62-yarder, give the Chiefs the ball back if you miss? 62
yards, even in Denver, even at the high altitude, even though we've had record-setting field goals kicked there, the odds aren't in your favor. I'm thinking you got a 20% shot of making it. I don't do it. You're 1 first down away from being in legitimate field goal range at that point if you're the Chiefs. Yeah. That's why I don't do it.
This AFC West has been amazing with the Raiders and then the Chiefs and the Broncos, and even the Chargers have been very entertaining. But a big win for the Chiefs. Monday Night Football came and went. The Packers beat the Eagles 27-13. Both teams are 5-6,
and both teams are going nowhere.
Yeah.
Packers looked a little bit better, but now you're hearing rumblings that McCarthy and Rodgers aren't getting along and all this other stuff. It's time to clean house in Green Bay. Packers are bad. Hopefully they can fix things in the offseason and come back better next year.
That's the NFL. Anything else before we go on the road?
Nope. I think everybody's done what they're going to do, so, just enjoy the football, as you like to say.
Yes, follow us on all of our things. Enjoy conference championships in the NCAAs. Enjoy the football this week.